Hello, hello, hello. So glad you're here today. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about STEAM writing. STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. All right, let's get started. Dee, 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 dee. Dee, dee. Oopsies. All right, so let me ask you, why do we write differently for different audiences? What do you think? Let's go ahead and set that timer for about 3 minutes and then we'll share out. Again, the warm up is, why do we write differently for different audiences? All right. Some examples can include writing differently for different age groups. One of my students had mentioned the difference between a Dr. Seuss book for a younger child, a picture book, versus Lord of the Rings, which would be much more detailed. Awesome. And then we write differently for different audiences in that we write for audiences who have similar interests in a different way than we would write to somebody who might not have similar interest. For example, we use jargon, specialized vocabulary. For example, a scientist would use uh, tier three words which are geared towards their field. An artist would do the same. And then also we code switch, which means, and we talked about this as well, my students and I. Code switching is we talk differently to our friends and we might talk to our grandparents. So code switching. All right. Oopsies. Let's go back to that one. Uh, let's try to go back. I'm on two screens to help me see a little bit better. Okay, so we did our warm up. Woo woo, good job. We're going to talk about our expectations, the state standards, the weekend statement, the STEAM project, and our ticket out the door. All right, our expectations are to attend class every time, participate, and be encouraging to one another. The world is definitely, certainly tough enough. Let's be kind to one another and have a safe spot where we can learn and grow together. All right. So, standards focus, students will be able to demonstrate an understanding of the following. Whoa. Establish and maintain a formal style. Come to class prepared, having read or studied required material. Explicitly draw on that preparation by referring to evidence on the topic, text, or issue to probe and reflect on ideas under discussion. And these are your Common Core sixth grade standards. So we're working on our writing standards as well as our speaking and listening standards. I'm practicing my speaking and listening as well digitally in the virtual environment. And so I encourage you to come to class, having done the project, and being able to share it with our friends. All right, the weekend statement for today, we can do a STEAM project and write about it like a scientist. All right, so we did our KWL and last week, and we're going to continue on with that. Let me show you some examples from my classes. Um, we're doing a frozen flowers project. What do we know about frozen flowers? Well, we know they're cold, they're alive, they're covered in ice, they're colorful. What do we want to know? Well, we want to know why freeze. Why would you freeze flowers? I wonder, does it take longer to freeze books more than flowers? I had never heard of that before. I was like, what? And some of my students were sharing that they learned about freezing books and it gets rid of the microbes. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Is there a certain kind of flowers or are there certain kind of flowers that we need to do the project on? Can I freeze a tree? One of my students asked. What flowers last the same time? Hmm. Okay, so I think that question was because I was like typing while listening to their questions and monitoring the chat, etc. This year is all about multiplicity and failing forward to learn and grow as a teacher. So this one is um, What if you freeze flowers that don't last the same amount of time? Certain flowers might last longer if they're cut than other flowers. Wouldn't it cause the plant to die? One of the students asked. What happens when you freeze a sapling or a seed? And one of my students was so sweet. We were talking, and he's like, mind blown. And he was talking about freezing a tree. I thought that was interesting. Yay. Okay, and then here's some other KWLs from my other classes. Again, the K is what you know, the W is what you want to learn, and the L will circle back at the end of our project. That is what you learned. All right, so ice flowers, we know they're frozen, they are yellow. One of my students said they look fake because of the background. It looks like glue. The glue makes it look like it's frozen in time and space. I think it is glue and tape. So one of my students thought it was glue and tape. And this is an example. I've been doing this project for a couple of years now. My It's one of my spring hobbies and inspired by a local artist. And here is a picture from our pool. And it's kind of a messy pool there, and in our apartments. And so it's ice flowers. Yes. All right. I wanted to also point a reference. I wanted to also document the process and the outtakes as well to show our students it is okay to make mistakes. Actually, there's no mistakes in art, only happy accidents, as Bob Ross would say. All right, things I want to know. Why is it growing in a paper background? They thought it was a paper background. Why does it look like it has arms and legs? Why does it look like they're fusing? One student asked if it looks like they're dancing. How do the ice flowers get their nutrients they need in the art? Hmm. Are they desert plants? Why do we freeze flowers? All right, here's another example. I know the ice flowers are when flowers are on trees and they freeze on the tree, one of my students said. And then he made this awesome connection. He said, that can happen with apples. There's ghost apples. And I was like, what? And I never heard of a ghost apple because I'm from Florida. Even though we lived in Chicago, I love my Chicago peeps and my Florida peeps. Um, but I never seen a ghost apple, so I had to look that up after class. And ice and flowers, frozen, you can hardly see the flowers, the parts where it's really solid ice. He said you see green stuff, yellow, and blue. And some things you want to learn. How do you make ice flowers? What are the different ways you can make ice flowers? For example, in a bucket, popsicles, ice cubes. Lots of fun questions. All right, so write like a scientist. How do you write like a scientist? First, you question, then you observe, you draw, you label, and you write. Why do we write? We write to teach others about our findings. This is writing like a scientist. All right, here's one of my projects that I worked on. This is called Botanical Kitchen, aka Popsicle Poppies. So we're practicing writing like a scientist. The students were gonna write about our STEAM project. Again, my fellow kiddos, the scientific method. You're going to want to ask a question, make a hypothesis or educated guess, experiment, make observations, and answer the questions. Oh, I was looking for my handy dandy magnifier, but I didn't bring it with me right now. It's probably in the kitchen when I was cooking. All right. So this is an example from Rai Yuji, and he's a famous artist, a local artist in our community, and he's been freezing flowers, and he's an awesome photographer. Um, so I wanted to share a little bit about his art, and he is one of the people that I was inspired by to do my project. Little backstory here. I used to teach at the Catholic school in Carmel, and a couple of my students, one started it, and then they all started doing this. Was so sweet when I taught second grade. Some of my kiddos would ask for a little Dixie cup, and they put the flowers in the Dixie cup, and they're like, "Mrs. Gilly, can we put that in the freezer?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" And, so they started freezing these flowers. I'm like, "What's going on with the frozen flowers?" And then they were sharing about this local artist. I was like, "How cool is that?" So I got inspired by my students who are inspired by artists. All right, so here we go again with kitchen bouquet. What did I call it? Botanical kitchen popsicle poppies. And I wanted to share a quote from The Secret Garden because our kiddos have been reading The Secret Garden. It's spring. All right, so Secret Garden. I am sure there's magic in everything, only we have not sense enough to get hold of it and to make it do things for us. That's a quote from Frances Hodgkin Burnett, circa 1911, from The Secret Garden. So I kind of think art is like magic. We're like looking for the beauty in the ordinary, and we're sharing that beauty with the world. All right, so here's an example. So what I did, I went ahead and used a handy dandy Ziploc bag, and I put it in to the freezer. What I noticed was the flowers uh, rose to the top and were floating from the top. Got these at the local farmers market, of course, where you're masked to keep safe, but you and keep our friends safe and our families safe. Most importantly, we want to keep our everyone in our community safe. Um, so, but you don't have to get the flowers at the farmer's market. The other day, I went walking around the block and I saw these cool shamrocks and I saw some cool looking weeds with yellow flowers. And I'm like, I'm going to freeze those and see how they turn out too. So, you don't have to spend any money on this project. Then I froze. And then I encourage you to use whoops, will it show up with the background? A handy dandy light box. And that was from one of my awesome students' parents who gave that to me when I taught at the Waldorf school. She gave me a light box. And we were doing tracing different activities with my student. And so you're going to want that light source for the background. And I encourage you to use a battery operated one. Do not use one that plugs in with an electrical socket. All right. So here's my example of what we're doing for writing. We've been using the whiteboard chat as a platform. The awesome thing about whiteboard chat is you can see your students working in real time. So you don't have to go into breakout rooms and skip around from room to room. You can have everybody in the same room. So if you're noticing a pattern on thinking or processing that you might need to remind your students about, you can share out and you can see those patterns of learning while you're looking. All right, so here's an example. This is of the scientific method. Practice writing like a scientist. Write about your STEAM project. So my question is how long will it take to freeze flowers in a frozen or freezer Ziploc bag? Make a hypothesis. My hypothesis is the more flowers in the bag, the longer it will take to freeze. Materials, flowers, water, a freezer, a Ziploc bag, or a plastic container. You can also use those plastic containers. When I taught elementary art, I had those plastic containers. You can just put them in the freezer. Also, definitely label them, uh, especially and ask mom and dad. Let them know that you've got a freezer art project going on in the freezer. Um, Mr. Gilly opened the freezer and one of the flour ice cubes, big ice cubes, almost landed on his foot. Thankfully, it didn't. But you want to put no. So I've been putting the little stickies on there afterwards, or after I put it in the freezer. Oh, I've been talking all day, so I'm a little tongue twisted today. All right. So procedure: place flowers in bag. Add water. Make sure that the container is shut all the way. Place in freezer overnight. Usually it takes about 2 days. Answer the question. So you're answering your question that you had originally posed. It takes almost 2 days to freeze the flowers in a Ziploc bag. The more flowers that are in the bag, the longer it will take to freeze. And what I've been noticing a lot of times, if they have stems, they'll all like clump together. So it's interesting, but petals will like float along. All right, and then ask another question. How do flowers in ice affect the freeze patterns? How do I freeze ice flowers with more bubbles? So you're going to ask questions for further research. All right. And then I had my students go ahead and do this in a whiteboard chat. All right. And then also my fellow students. So again, for our frozen STEAM project, wonder, ask a question, pick flowers, ask permission from your parent or learning coach and/or learning coach. Place flowers in a Ziploc bag or container. Add water, seal, and place in the refrigerator. Also, take a picture and send it to your teacher. Observe, log notes. When frozen, take out of the freezer and practice photography of ice flowers. Use your light source, for example, a sunshine, a window, to see if you can see transparency of the flowers. You're looking for that transparency of the flowers. And then I put my email for students as well. All right. Um, one word of one interesting thing, speaking of light sources, one summer what I did, or actually it was a spring because it was pretty chilly. I jumped in the pool and I took a picture of the ice flowers from underneath, and you can see um, the sunshine illuminating the flowers. It's beautiful. All right, so when we're writing about it, we have our word bank, frozen flowers steam project. I'm going to work on this tomorrow with some of my kiddos as well because I'm extending this lesson for 2 weeks. And so I'm going to hopefully add to our word bank. So we have ice, liquid, gas, solid. So we're talking about states of matter, slush, light, arranged, packing, geometric, crystal, lattice, crystallization, degrees, matter, states, water, nature, temperature, molecule, bubbles, transparent, opaque, cold, energy, structure, aperture, perspective, ice cubes, freezer, photographer, botanist, glaciologist. I learned that word doing this project. I'm like, what is it called when somebody studies ice? Glaciologist. All right, and I encourage my students to use those sensory words with taste, touch, smell, sight, and hearing. And those sequence words before, first, next, last, and sometimes. All right, and also I made a gallery, online gallery, kind of like a shared digital portfolio, if you will, for our kiddos to share out our artwork. So I'd like you to go ahead and share out your artwork. And then also to put comments as well. So we have a variety here. We have some with ice cubes, lots of different colors. Um, I love the variety. So we want to encourage our kiddos to share out and to encourage one another. All right, so the ticket out the door for this project, share out your science question. Go ahead and write it in the chat or take the microphone. Share out your science question. Okay, thanks for visiting today. I hope you have a wonderful day and have fun with your Frozen Flowers project. Take care and do something kind for your families today. Bye, guys. All right.